Well, hey, Motor Warriors. I am leaving, what was that town called? Valentine, I guess. Valentine, Nebraska. Heading towards Chadron. I got to stop and get a new tent. And then it's the only Walmart, you know, or reasonably priced place. So Chadron has a Walmart from what it looks like on the map. Then I'm going to cut up and go towards Pringle, South Dakota. And if all goes well today, then I'll camp there for a few days and get in some, you know, riding like on Needles Highway and different places like that. But it's been a mixed emotion type ride. And as long as I got this 143-mile stretch, I thought, I don't know what kind of views I'm going to get. Yesterday was real pretty, but I was not in the mood to turn on the camera. But anyway, the way this trip was originally planned is I was going to go, I mean, I've done a bunch of Saddle Sore 1000s, and I was going to do the Bun Burner 1500. That's 1,500 miles in 36 hours. If you do it in 36 hours, it's called Bun Burner Silver. But if you live in states like, you know, Montana or whatever, where it's like 95-mile-an-hour speed limit, then you could probably do it in 24 hours, and then that's called a Bun Burner Gold. But Tennessee, I don't have any roads like that where, you know, you can go that fast, so the ride wouldn't get approved anyway, because I'd have been having to go really fast according to the law. But anyway, so that's what I was going to do. And you can accumulate them, so you can, if you do the first shot at 1,000 within 24, you know, you get your Saddle Sore 1000 ride. And then if you put in another 500, then, you know, you get the Bun Burner 1500. And that's what I was originally going to do. I had my plan all laid out and everything. But when I started the trip, I started it at night. And so I ended up going through, and when I got up into Illinois, all the construction mile after mile after mile, and it was so narrow that trucks would have had to been really careful to go through there without hitting the cement barriers and all that. So I'm sitting there on the motorcycle riding up there in potholes and, you know, grooves in the road, and it's like whoop, 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 just no fun. Gets you kind of, you know, paying attention. It kind of gets on your nerves a little bit. Well, I ended up going through Kansas City. As the sun was coming up, Kansas City is to my back, and it wasn't that, you know, wasn't that bad. It's like I could see the sun coming up in my rear view mirror. And it was warm. It seemed like it was going to be a decent day. But as the sun went up, it got hotter and hotter and hotter. And they said it was the hottest day they've had all year. That it was, I forget what he said, but it was up in, you know, 100 and something. It was the hottest day they've had all year. Well, that part isn't, you know, too bad. I can deal with that. What got me is that all of a sudden the wind started picking up. And that wind was blasting me all over the interstate, and that'll wear on you, especially if you're like, you know, when there's cars around you, they're you know, blowing around, you're blowing around. Well, at one point, I'm riding along, and there's a double bottom. If you don't know what double bottoms are, that's just a tractor trailer that's pulling two trailers, and they call that the double bottoms. But anyway, I was riding next to a double bottom, and between the gusts from his truck taking up, you know, the air and pushing the air around and stuff, it's blowing me all over, man. So I slowed down a little bit. Well, the problem is that the truck slowed down a little bit too, but he's all over. And I thought, man, I gotta slow it down. So I slowed down to like 55 or 60 just to let him get ahead of me, because we were both swerving all over because of the strong wind. And I didn't want to be near him when, you know, the wind's blowing like that. I know when I slowed down, no sooner did he get, you know, past me, and his second trailer, you know, must have been empty or something, because all of a sudden it started to swing around like it was going to jackknife right into where I would have been. If I'd have stayed near him, I could have been killed, you know. Not cool at all. And that kind of stuff will put stress on you and whatever. Well, I found a place to set up the tent, and that wasn't too bad. I had trying to do it in the dark, because by the time I got there and found a place, it was dark, so I'm setting up in the dark. Well, then the next morning I get up and it's real peaceful, and I'm like, okay. And my body, you know how you get if you're under a lot of stress and stuff, it's like my body was aching. I ended up going down the road the next day, again, triple digit heat, wind blowing all over, and there's only so much of that you can take, so I went, I forget how many 100 miles I went, and then I set up tent again. But this time, I was camping in a park, a city park, and I've never known that you could do that before. But I got there kind of late, and I looked around, and I wasn't even sure where you could go camp, because I didn't really see anything. It said RVs, but it didn't say like anything about tents or where you go. So I just followed the one sign, and I saw a tent up on the grass. And I looked around, and it's like, well, this looks like a flat spot here. So I start setting up my tent, and all of a sudden, off in the distance, I see this black strip and lightning. But it didn't look like it was coming towards us. It looked like it was going away. And I'm like, oh, I had no big deal then. So I set up, and I'm trying to put all of the pegs in the ground, but that was the ground was so hard. As I'm trying to get the pegs into the ground, I can't. Well, I've got a pretty good knife that's real heavy duty camping knife. So I tried to smack them in with the side of the blade. That wasn't doing any good. So I put in, one or two, and I've got 2 tents that I took them with me on this trip. But because the one is so small, you can't really get dressed. I mean, it's hard for me to get dressed just in a spot that's like, maybe 3 feet tall. I want to be able to stand up and put my pajamas on to get comfortable at night, and stand up and put my boots on in the morning or whatever. And so I ended up buying this little genie tent. I'll probably put a picture in the videos or something, I don't know. But anyway, at that place, I should have taken pictures of everything as it was destroyed. But anyway, at that place, I set up the tents the best I could. One to stand up and get dressed, and to keep my gear warm or dry in case it did rain, and then the other one to sleep in. Well, I got there, got ready for bed, and I'm like, oh man, I'm so exhausted. So I laid down, and I'm like, man, I'm going to be sleeping here in a matter of moments. I'm just so tired. But all of a sudden, I could hear the lightning, and I could see the tent flash. I mean, the tent light up, and look at that old thing. I wonder what that is. Interesting. But anyway, so it ended up, the wind was blowing so hard, and the lightning was all around. Just, you could hear it, and you could hear the thunder. There was a couple times where, how you see the lightning, and then you can count how many miles away the thunder or the lightning actually struck by the sound of the thunder or whatever. This one, it was like flash boom, flash boom. I mean, it was right over my head, or right near me, and man, it was freaky. Well, all of a sudden I'm feeling damp, and I'm like, well, I shouldn't be feeling damp like that. I reach over, and it felt like the bottom of my tent, it felt like a water bed. As I'm pushing under it, I could feel water underneath, or just mushing, and I'm like, what in the world, man? It was pouring pretty hard at that point, and then as the wind is blowing hard, it's pushing the tent, against me. So I'm holding my arm up so the tent doesn't fall on me. And then finally, the wind hit with a big gust, and boom, down went the tent, collapsed all around me like a mummy. Wind is blowing, lightning like crazy, thunder, boom, And it's like, man, is there a tornado going on? I mean, it's so loud, it sounds like a train, and it's like, I don't want it to catch this tent like a sail and then throw me against a tree or something. It's like, man, this is crazy scary. So I said, forget it. And then all of a sudden I started realizing that my sleeping bag, everything is soaking wet. I'm like, what is going on? So as I open up the tent zipper and I put my hand out to try and crawl out of the tent because it's like wrapped around me, I put my hand in about 4 inches of water, and I'm like, are you kidding me? So I get out of the tent and I look all around, and all around me there's about 4 inches of water, and it's lightning like crazy. And I thought, boy, this is a good way to die, you know. So I looked over and I saw this building that I'd noticed when I came in, but there was a door open and a light was on, and I thought, well, I don't know what that building is. I got here late, but I'm gonna go up in there, and if it's a bathroom, you know, it's like, well, at least I'll get out of the rain. So I went up, and there was a guy standing there watching the storm, and he worked there, and he said that he's waiting because they were saying how on the news there was a golf ball size hail coming down, and you shouldn't drive in it because it could bust your windshield and chip up, you know, dent up your car or whatever. So he said he was waiting until it stopped. He said, but you know, you can come on in and have a seat, and there's a plastic chair or whatever. And so I went in there, we sat and talked, and I told him, you know, do you realize that flood's in? And he said, yeah, I thought we had it pretty well leveled. It's just coming down so fast that it can't soak through this hard Nebraska dirt, you know, very fast. So I sat there at about 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the morning. He left and told me I could stay in there until the sun came up or whatever I wanted to do, because it was supposed to be nice the next day. Well, he had a chair in there that it was comfortable. This one chair was comfortable, but it didn't recline or anything like that. So I just sat there, and then all of a sudden that cold air, you know, that was coming into that garage, it's like, man, that's what it was. It was like some kind of maintenance shed type thing. But anyway, you know, I'd been riding in a few days of intense triple-digit heat, and then all of a sudden I'm laying in 4 inches of cold water. I mean, cold water. Well, then the temperature dropped down to like 61 or something, I think he said, the next morning. So I'm soaking wet because I don't have any dry clothes. Everything is in the tents are all soaked. I'm sitting on that chair just like, I was shivering, man. I thought, well, it won't be long, and it'll start warming up, and then, you know, I'll warm up. Well, I had to take my stuff to town and wash it and dry it because it smelled like swamp water, and it was just, what a nightmare. You know, I was freezing all night long, couldn't sleep because I was just so cold. Then the next morning, it's like, well, I'm wearing my pajamas, but everything else is wet too. So I took it to town on the bike to rewash everything, and then came back, and I'm having to like pack everything up, and it's like the longer it took, the hotter it started to get. And then there was a guy that he had a Harley, and I was stopping to get something to drink in between loads that I was trying to wash and dry. I said hey to him, and he just acted like I didn't exist. Well, then I find out when I got back to the campsite to get the rest of my stuff that he was there, and the guy that was in the tent, you know, had a tent up the night before when I got there, he was saying, you know, about how that I was there too, but my stuff got blown away, and then he was telling him the story. And then that guy came over to the guy with the Harley came over to talk to me and said, oh yeah, I was wondering what kind of biker you were, seeing plaid red and black pajamas. And I said, yeah, but at least they matched my bike, didn't they? And he said, well, yeah, but he said, you know, wearing pajamas. And I'm like, dude, everything I have is soaking wet. And I was going to tell him, he said, yeah, that's what the other guy told me, man. I didn't realize. Say, this Harley guy is like judging me and whatever, he had no idea. And when the guy told him I'm from Tennessee and passing through Nebraska, and then that storm hit, laying in 4 inches of water, he went from thinking I'm not really a biker to I'm probably more hardcore than he ever could be. But anyway, he had stopped because he was going to do a trip. He lives in Nebraska, I forget where, but he was going to do a trip, and he was supposed to meet up with his brother, but his bike was acting up real bad, and they didn't have a part locally, So his brother, instead of meeting him on the bike, he's going to come and get him with a trailer and take it back home and then fix the bike before he goes on his trip. But anyway, yeah, the one tent that I said collapsed on me, I packed everything up and I was going down the road, and I was just leaving the town, Ainsworth, I believe is what that was called. But anyway, I was just leaving Ainsworth, and some guy comes pulling up behind me in a truck, and he's beeping and flashing his lights. So I slow down and get over to the side a little bit, and he catches up to me and says, you got a bag dragging, don't you know that? And I'm like, no, I didn't realize it. I stopped and got out, and my tent, which was junk anyway, was so ripped up to shreds that I thought, well, I don't even know if it's going to be usable anymore, but I'll just put it back together. So I strapped it all back down, thinking, okay, everything should be good. Well, I'm going down the road, and wind picked up and going over potholes and whatever, and I got about halfway to the town where I got fed up and just said forget it and stayed there last night. And because the tent had come off again, and I didn't realize it, people going by flashing their lights, and then when I realized something was wrong, then I pulled over, and the tent was so ripped to shreds, it was like there's no way this is even usable. So when I got to the motel last night, it's called the Rains Motel. When I got there, I talked to the head maid or whatever she is, and told her what had happened, that it fell off twice and dragged, and it's like not even usable. She was like, yeah, you can just leave it on the chair and I'll have the guy throw it out. It's alright. So that's what I did, and then repacked everything. Now I'm heading down the road to the Super Walmart here, and but anyway, I'm going to get another tent and then head on up to go camping by Pringles. But the way everything has worked out, hopefully that'll stay the plan. I don't know, but it's been one of those, like, started off with a smile, all excited. I had my ride planned, and it's like, yeah, here we go, and then one thing after another, and then waking up in 4 inches of ice water, everything soaking wet. Take a day to try and rewash and dry and pack, and it's like I used over 20 bucks just to wash and dry some stuff that was washed, dried, and folded and put away. But that rain came and just soaked everything. It had a weird smell, like swamp water or something. So anyway, roller coaster ride. But that's what happens when you're on a long distance ride. You go through so many different things, that you don't know what to wear or bring. So I've got a heavy leather jacket that's packed away. I've got my electric heated liner, just in case it gets real cold out in Utah by my son. I got rain gear just in case it rains while I'm riding. Well, there's kind of a neat bridge-like thing. Still a great time, still a really nice ride, enjoying the views and all that. It's just when you're out here by yourself and all this stuff happens to you, and then you got to tie everything down with paracord, and your hands get all sore, tying and untying, tying and untying. Your hands get real sore pulling on the paracord. And it just, if somebody's with you when you do these kind of rides, you've got someone to talk to, or someone that, it's like, here, hold this so I can strap this. And when you're trying to hold it and strap it, it sometimes doesn't get tight like it should, and then it'll work its way loose, and I don't know. But anyway, and it gives you someone to, if something goes wrong, it gives you someone to complain to that can relate. So hey, do you want to come along? Anyway, so that's kind of what's been going on. So right now I'm about halfway between Valentine and Chadron. But just imagine, I mean, this was bison territory. So you look out over here, you see these big open areas like this, and I can just picture, millions of bison going across this land, and then native tribes, you know, on horseback and spears and bow and arrow or whatever, going after, you know, that, you know, going after some bison for the meat and for the hides and whatever. But I don't know what that is up on top there. If that's a railroad, a little picnic table. If there's a trail going up across there, what that is. That's the second little bridge like that I saw. It's kind of a ridge along there, so I don't know. But I don't really see a railroad track here. I don't know what that was. Maybe the guy who owns the land just put it up, even though it doesn't really do anything, just because he thought it would make it look kind of cool. Who knows, man? Anyway, Motor Warriors, big open plains, I guess they call this area. I don't know, but I can tell a difference in, I don't know if it's just this section or what, but it feels like I'm going up in elevation. But anyway, I'm going to turn off my camera so I got some battery left later. But remember to live your life with the heart of a Viking warrior. And don't let your tent collapse on you. Bye, y'all.